Schlachmones. Every idea that we are happy or unhappy is a tremendous delusion. Swami Vivekananda. I was teaching an elder hostel at Camp Solomon in Brewster, New York. It was a lovely day, and I had walked on a lovely path that led through the woods surrounding the lake. I didn't know it then, but I had been bitten by a tick and had contracted Lyme disease. It took 2 or 3 days to develop. I remember brushing it off, feeling a little scratch on my thigh, but really nothing, and then the bullseye rash developed under my left arm, near the armpit. But for the 2 or 3 days before contracting the disease, I lived in complete harmony with myself, the world around me, and God, and I was happy to be alive. One afternoon, after I had completed my lecture on the Baal Shem, the founder of Hasidism in the 18th century, and had mentioned the Munkacher Rebbe from Czechoslovakia in the course I was teaching, entitled The Hasidic Tale, Pathways to Oneself and to God, a young, actually a middle-aged woman with black hair and brown eyes came up to me in order to tell me how much she had enjoyed my lecture. I thanked her and walked out the door to the building in which I had just spoken, as she said to me, "Dick, I am originally from the small town of Munkach, about which you spoke." My ears perked up immediately, and I said, "Oh, is that right? Have you ever heard of the Munkacher Rebbe?" "Heard of him?" She answered. "I knew him. In fact, I met him in person." "Is that right?" I said and smiled. "Would you like me to tell you the story?" she asked. Another big smile came over my face. "I'd love it," I said. And with that, we walked down the path, away from the building, and through the camp. "Would you mind if I accompanied you to your cabin?" I asked. "Not at all," she responded. I was born and grew up in the Czech town of Munkach. My father was a wealthy man. He owned a mill and was also involved in lumber. He was not a member of the Hasidic community, but he was a great admirer of the Rebbe. I was a little girl, 9 years old. It was Purim, and my father wanted to send the Rebbe Schlachmones. My mother baked cakes and cookies, and my father put them on a plate. Under the cakes and cookies, he put 100 dinar. He handed me the plate and said I should bring it to the Rebbe and I should give it to him in person. At the door, a guard would stop me and ask me what I wanted. I should tell him, "I have Schlachmones for the Rebbe." He would answer, "A nekeva, a woman. No, it is not possible. A woman cannot enter the Rebbe's room." I should insist, my father told me. I should insist and say, "My father said I must give the cakes and cookies to the Rebbe in person." I did as my father told me to do. The guard let me pass, and that is how I met the Rebbe. I've never forgotten his lovely long white beard and the twinkle he had in his eyes. 7 years later, I was in the concentration camp Auschwitz. I was 16 years old. The Germans had decided to send 100 women to the gas chambers that morning. They lined us up in groups of 5. The next to the last group had 6 women in it because a mother would not let go of her young daughter who was in the last group and kept her beside her. The Germans counted off 100 women in groups of 5. In the last group, there were only 4 women, so the Blockälteste, the woman in charge, pointed to the next group and said, "Take that one from the next group." I was that one. One of the other guards who liked me went over to the Blockälteste and said, "Don't take her. There are already 100 women." And she showed her the 6 women in the next to the last group. The Blockälteste looked at me a moment, then said, "Send her back." And so I was sent back into the land of the living. A big smile came over my face. "You got the Munkacher Rebbe's blessing," I said. "What do you mean, Dick?" the woman asked me. "Your father put 100 dinar on the plate under the cakes and cookies, one for each of the women who went to the gas chambers that morning, and you alone were spared." The woman looked at me with a smile on her face and in her eyes. "Thank you, Dick," she said. I had never thought about it in that way before.